What freshens the Golden Flake snack treats doesn't just happen
I don't either.
Hey, Golden Flake corn chips.
Go ahead, Phil.
It takes Golden Flake's special
we
blend of
jumped in,
corn to give the Golden
and Phil
Flake
and I
corn
was in the
chips a
middle of
great
talking
tasting
about Tennessee
flavor.
balls.
And Golden Flakes fast
went
delivered to
live
make
first,
sure the
Phil,
corn
so
chips are
I
crunchy and
agree
fresh
with you.
every
Tennessee ain't
time.
gonna lose at home.
Or take the Golden Flake cheese curls.
Yeah.
They're just
And that-
easy
Yeah,
enough,
it
with a
remains to be
perfect crunch
seen,
on
but
every
it's going
bite.
to be so hard to beat at Knoxville.
Just as there's
Coalfield-
more than one way to
Coalfield
throw a
advantage
football,
makes a
there's more than
big
one way to
difference.
satisfy
That last
hungry
game,
appetite.
Georgia,
That's why Golden Flake
Tennessee,
has a team of snack
that
treats.
is going to be so
to make
emotional.
sure
It'll be
they
just
have
like
a snack treat that will
just like
satisfy
Alabama
you.
was last
Buy
year
Golden
with
Flake. And
the
remember,
crowd and
the
everything
Tide
else.
develops some know-how when it
I'm
comes
looking
to
forward to
football.
that game, but of
But
course,
Golden Flake
got
has the
Texas
know-how
A&M
when it comes
first.
to
Ought to be a
snack
good
treats.
football game too.
Yeah, they've already announced it's going to be on CBS, so it'll be an afternoon game. But it'll probably be a cool, crisp fall afternoon. It'll still be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, this is Beyond the Boot, your weekly high school football magazine for the tri-state area. Phil Harris, along with Randall Cunningham. We don't have a guest tonight. Phil, we had 3 lined up, and three out of the 3 said we need to move this show to Tuesday because Monday's install day. So it's a rough day for them. And that's kind of the reason we've not been able to get many guests lately. It's getting that time of year in high school football.
Well, I think early part of the season they can break away, but as the games get more and more important, days get shorter, they get a lot more on their plate. So, I knew early we would be able to get a few interviews, but as the season got cranked along, it's hard to get those people because they have so many distractions already and they want to focus on the coming week and not about other things. They want to, they're right in the middle of their season and that's what they want to concentrate on.
And we can't blame them. I mean, we've had some great guests on here, and of course there was some great rivalry games this week. Phil, some games we're going to talk about are yearly, as Coach Frady says at Bledsoe County, they're gas pump games. Whenever you meet somebody at the gas pump, they ask you, "Are you going to beat such and such? Or are you going to beat not how's your season going to go? Are you going to beat that one particular team?"
Yeah, no, that's definitely the way it is. That neighborhood. People that's involved with their program, it just kind of links everybody together. And, just like down here, just for an example, down here, Valley Head and Ider, a lot of these people know each other, and we're 15 minutes from Ider High School here.
Yeah.
So it's always been, it's not a heated battle where each community really hates each other. They do on that hour and a half to 2 hours on Friday night. But in other words, it's a friendly rivalry, but they want to beat each other passionately.
I almost put Valley. I did a little top 10 games I've been involved in as either a fan, an announcer, or a rivalry, and I was going to run those by you. And Valley Head at Ider was probably my 11th one, but that's really it's not a hated rival like Plainview, Sylvania, or Fort Payne, Scottsboro, which are the 2 that I ended up talking about from Alabama.
No, it's different. I guess it's the kind of the way that, say, the Tennessee-Auburn rivalry is. You're fierce competitors. You want to beat each other, but neither one have done anything to make each other hate each other because they don't play every year. Ider plays every year, but it's never a region game or area game. It's just a county game.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those games that everybody kind of uses the measuring stick for. I think the all-time series after Valley Head won Friday is like 33 wins for Valley Head, 31 for Ider, and like 3 ties. So it's always been back and forth. It's just one of those games you just look forward to because it's going to be, a slobber knocker. Both teams are going to get after each other hard, and they're going to shake hands and go home.
Yeah, and there's some, and I won't say that the Sylvania and Rainsville communities hate each other, but Sylvania football and Plainview football, that's a different kind of rivalry.
Yeah, because a lot of that's envy and that type of thing. Both of them want to be the star of Sand Mountain, so that adds just a little bit more to that rivalry. Then you've got kids that are on the borderline. Some of them ends up going to Plainview. Some of them ends up going to Sylvania. But they have been in battles for so long. It is just a real heated rivalry. Just the same way as Plainview and Fife. They're right on top of each other. Same way as Geraldine and Crossville when Crossville was playing. They're just right on top of each other, and it's a fierce rivalry between those schools.
Well, this is a good time to talk about the rivalry thing, and we'll get to Tennessee in a minute. I wrote down, Phil, the 10 biggest rivalries I've ever been involved in, either as a fan at the game or as an announcer. And I did it off the top of my head. And I just want to get your impression. Do you consider these a top 10 rival or not? Just go through them real fast. Maybe we'll do a more extensive list down the road. But my number one, Phil, and that we'll talk about that in just a minute, was Macaulay Baylor. I just think that's the biggest rival in Chattanooga, in North Georgia area. I think it's a different level because it is private schools.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times too, even the people that are your occasional fans, like when you went to school, like when I went to school at Red Bank and Ooltewah, you always wanted to know what Baylor and Macaulay was going to do when they played each other. It was kind of on the back burner, but you were always interested in that game no matter what, because you knew those two were similar in every way, and it was always a great rivalry. It always has been. I mean, for years and years and years, there's nothing been taken away from that.
Well, the next one I think is it's a shame it's not being played, and it needs to be played. And I think the people of Marion County will get this sorted out. But South Pittsburgh, Marion, that's two different programs, multi-time state champions, just 15 minutes apart, and it's a different. That may be the biggest feel I've ever had at a game.
Yeah, because I mean they're right on top of each other. It's just senseless that they don't play. It just don't make a whole lot of sense. It's just you'd like to see them get back to that. I mean, heck, North Jackson and South Pittsburgh's playing now.
Yeah.
There's no reason why Marion County and South Pittsburgh, and as time goes on, people will forget about all that. They'll get back to playing each other. One coach, you'll have a couple of coaches decide, hey, let's just drop this and just play the game.
Yes.
And eventually they'll get back to playing.
Absolutely. Another one that I've seen, I've never called it, but I hold it in special esteem, is Bradley Central Cleveland.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's been a rivalry for years. When I lived up there, it may have been one of the most heated rivalries in Tennessee, year in and year out. They always played each other at the end of the year, and that's another one of those everybody would point to. Let's see how that one comes out. Chattanooga don't know a whole lot about when you get over into the valley, but they know enough, and they know how important this game is.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one that kind of transitions. Another one, both teams are really down, but my first rivalry from North Georgia, Ringo, LFO, and it's a shame I looked at it today. Ringo and LFO have one win between them all year.
Yeah, that's very tough, But yeah, they are fierce rivalries. Rivals are right on top of each other. Next door neighbors, so to speak, and they're both pretty good sized communities. But yes, this is an intense rivalry between these two. It'll make, it could make one of them season, because that's one they can point to that they, that they'll remember. Because always when these two get together, it's a memorable game.
One that I know you know well, having gone to school there, and it's down right now because Saudi's down. But Red Bank Saudi Daisy, over any school that played Red Bank, I think it was Red Bank Saudi was number one.
Yeah, Red Bank and Saudi always huge. Of course, Red Bank and Hickson is too. But a lot of times in the Red Bank Saudi rivalry, it's always been a fierce rivalry, but most of the time Red Bank's had the upper hand.
Yeah.
The only thing is about that, that's why, I don't know if I put it up there as one of the top rivalries, but it's two schools that know each other very well and have played for a long, long, long time.
It could have been Red Bank Hickson Saudi Daisy, Hickson Red Bank Ray County. There's a lot of elements, but it's just those North Hamilton County schools, and I'll include Ray County in that always just kind of played each other.
Yeah, back when I was in school, the fierce rivalry for Red Bank when I was at school up there was, one of the ones that they played was Ray County.
Yeah,
and that was always a great football game when those two got together.
A couple more here on the list, Phil, just because I know it's one of the oldest rivalries in this region, is Bradley Central McMinn County. Again, just two teams in the same, and Bradley Central is the only team that made it twice. Bradley Central Cleveland and Bradley Central McMinn County.
Yeah, McMinn County, they're right on the border of each other, so they're very familiar with each other. They're in different counties, but that don't mean, that don't take anything away from the rivalry, because a lot of times Bradley Central, Cleveland, and McMinn County are all in the same area or region. So that's what makes it such an important game between those schools. And traditionally, all three of them very strong.
Phil, one that you've called probably 15 of them from both press boxes, I think, Fort Payne and Scottsboro.
Yeah, it is it's a big rivalry because it's a Top Cat trophy. And really, Fort Payne doesn't have any real natural rivalries because we're over here so close to the Georgia line. Scottsboro still has North Jackson and Gunnersville, people like that. And it's big, but, I think it might be a little bit bigger for Fort Payne than it is for Scottsboro in that series, because I've been involved in both of them, because Scottsboro would rather beat Gunnersville or North Jackson way before they beat Fort Payne. But that don't take anything away from the game, because it's always a fierce, competitive, and well-played football game between two schools that, that often it's not for playoff implications right now because they're in different classifications, but it's one you want to get under your belt and win.
And Phil, one that I'm just going to throw in there is if you don't know about it, you ain't experienced it. And it's one that's off the beaten path, but it's one that a few years ago I got to experience in a broadcasting form, Gordon Lee and Tryon. And these two schools truly hate each other.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. They are not real friendly with each other. When I went to the game, you could hear Gordon Lee and people talk. And, of course, Tryon will poke fun at Gordon Lee. And, yes, it is. It very much is. They've played 80-something times.
Yeah.
So it is a fierce rivalry. And it was fun to go watch. I mean, it was fun to go watch that game. How personal it is for everybody. There's, great crowd on both sides. And, it's a good competitive series. And, Tryon had the upper hand this time, but that don't take nothing away. Gordon Lee wants to beat them bad.
Well, this week's screen cover to our show is the home side at the McCallie-Baylor game, which was a great game as usual. And we'll get into those Chattanooga area games now. Phil, I'm going to start with a team that we both seen early in the year. Bledsoe County gets the win over Whitwell, 19-7.
Yeah, that Whitwell has shown very much improvement. Of course, this was they were unbeaten, I believe.
Yeah.
But this was really probably their fiercest test of the year. And, of course, Bledsoe County has gotten better and better each week. So, you knew this was going to be a dandy football game. And Bledsoe County, fortunately come out on top in this one. And that's a big win for them and Whitwell's first loss. But take nothing away from Whitwell. They're a pretty good football team.
They're still going to be playing for that region championship, but they're going to be playing that monster that is South Pittsburgh that week. So, Boys Buchanan gets the win over Notre Dame, 56-7. And Bradley Central gets tested, Phil, up in Knoxville at Farragut. Bradley Central ekes out a win over Farragut, 28-20.
Yeah, well, Farragut's got a good football program. They're all.
Hold on, let me see if I got. Sorry, we're losing our mic. East Bridge gets the win over Signal Mountain, and that's 2 in a row for the Pioneers.
Yeah, when you start out there, the four teams they play first from murder.
Yeah.
But now they're getting to play the team that, they have an opportunity to beat. Now they're playing 2 in a row. Those kids got to be feeling good about themselves right now. This 2 big wins back to back on a team that, looks like it's pretty good team job.
Yeah, absolutely. My next 2 opponents had Clutton County, Grundy County over Community, 37-8. Dixon, 49 and Warrior 6. And the Wildcats just keep rolling, Phil.
Yeah, definitely so.
Cool. Sorry, folks, we keep going off the air. We were talking about Macaulay Baylor and a lot of emotion around the loss of Christopher Wright to an unbelievable homicide downtown in Chattanooga just before, 2 nights before the McCallie-Baylor game. McCallie holds on to win, Phil, but that McCallie and Baylor community, they're so tight-knit. It's different.
Yeah, it really is. I saw a lot of the kids that had their shirts and ties on, and it looked like it was a great football game, great atmosphere. Like you say, it's one of them you wish you had the opportunity to go watch it every year.
Yes.
But what a great matchup it was between those two. And then the game turned out to be as good as billed. So, and that's always makes it a lot more fun.
And it's really different over there because, it's not home and away. It's just two sides of the bleachers full. It's not really, they're home, but it's really not home.
Yeah, you wouldn't call it a home. Neither team really has a home field advantage.
No. Ray County continued to slide, losing it in Min County 35-7. Ray County team's so beat up, Phil. It really is a team that the fortunes turned when the injuries come early in the year.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. And, it's we talked about last week, they've kind of fallen back into that mode where they, looking for answers and can't find them. And so, they're just going to have to just play their way through it. That's about all you can do. Just keep fighting, and better days will come.
Yeah. Meigs County big over McMinn Central 53-29. And a game that I found interesting, Phil, because I would never have said this is a 14-0 game. But Red Bank, Saudi, that we talked about, Red Bank 14, Saudi Daisy nothing.
Yeah, of course, they're big rivals, right on top of each other. And I think it was in a region game for both of them.
No, it is not.
It wasn't a region game. It's more of a rivalry game.
Yeah.
So, and Red Bank started off like a ball of fire, and they struggled just a little bit. Of course, it's good for them to get to work.
Absolutely. And that's coming week 10. And we may talk about it next week. And maybe a little surprise coming week 10 here on River City Media around that Red Bank Hickson football game, Phil. If we can get it worked out, we might have some interesting news about that.
That would be fun.
Sell Creek, Lookout Valley, 45-6. South Pittsburgh struggles, but holds on to beat Middle Tennessee Christian Academy. And Phil, I undersold them on the air, on here, on.
Within 18-6 of South Pittsburgh, they have to be a pretty darn good football team because we know how good South Pittsburgh is. So, that was good for South Pittsburgh. They needed a look like that. Really, the only other team that's really given them any kind of look whatsoever has been Sequatchie County. Otherwise, they've just mauled everybody. So this is a good game for South Pittsburgh to have a little bit of adversity, and it gives something for the coaches to coach the kids about how, each win is fragile. Any team can beat you at any time. And you have to sell the kids on that because sometimes they get a little bit complacent and think they're invincible. And that's not always the case because sometimes you can play your worst game and a team that's average plays their best game and you can go down in a hurry.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think friend of the show, Calvin Gilly, had a 40-yard touchdown catch in that game too, Phil. That his dad was excited about that.
Yeah, I imagine he was. It had to be a lot of fun for him. And of course, like I say, big plays are few and far between when you play somebody that good. So those kind of scores are huge.
Absolutely. Look, jump down to Georgia for a few scores. Cartersville over Calhoun. Phil, Calhoun's always great, but it just seems like this year they've had some struggle in some games.
Yeah, well, Carterville's good every year.
Yeah.
I mean, they put out Division I players all the time. So when you play them, you know what you're going to get. It's going to be a tough battle. And, in Calhoun, they have been good. There's no doubt about it, but they haven't been that playoff power that they were lately. It's just playing a team like Adairville's on a different level.
100%. 100%. Cola Creek, Gordon Lee gets another win as the all-Navy baby switched past Cola Creek.
Yeah. And that's a big win. That's 2-point wins in a row for Gordon Lee, and a huge win for them. I think they lost to Cola Creek last year.
Yes.
And I don't know if Cola Creek has won a game, but it sounds like they give Gordon Lee all they want. Gordon Lee just, come out the winner on this one. And boy, it's getting close to playoff time, and each win's important right now.
LFO gets that win I was talking about. LFO over Ridgeland, 21-9, Phil. And the Warriors they need to get the ship right. LFO has struggled ever since John Allen left down there a decade ago. And it seems like that program, I tell everybody about LFO is it's almost like a transient community that so many people down there are not from that area. It's blew up so fast that, maybe they work down there, but their kids go to Baylor or McCallie or East Hamilton or something. It's just doesn't seem to be there for them right now.
Yeah, and they're right in the center of everybody around them. Of course, they're in those kind of communities where everybody's going to go where everybody's winning.
Yeah.
And sometimes that hurts a community like them. And that area has really expanded in the last several years.
Yes, sir. Kind of shocking to me, Tryon beats Dade County. Dade County's such a promising start. Now sets 1-5, but I feel like they're a good football team.
Oh, they're a very good team for 1-5. I mean, you stay with Tryon at 28-21, you've done very good. Because they lost to Marion County. They beat North Sand Mountain handily, but the schedule for Dade County has been murderous.
Yeah.
But they hung right in there with Tryon, and we know how good Tryon is.
Yeah.
And of course, that's a big rivalry. They're right on top of each other. So that's one of them. Sometimes you just kind of throw the record books out the window.
And Dade County's unusual, Phil. It's like its own little place in the world, It's not near anything.
Yeah, it's kept in its own little corner, very, very isolated, and they're right on the line. Kind of like the way that in Fort Payne gets.
Yeah.
You really, when you talk about high school football, is they don't have any natural rivals to the west. Everything's to the east. Like over here in Alabama, Meadowhead and Fort Payne runs into that. There's nobody to the east. Everybody's to the west. So,
yep.
They're kind of sitting there by themselves, and that's what happens up here.
Absolutely. I think it happens to Dade County, too. I know the North Sand Mountain games, it's like their game of the year usually. Where we at? Dalton loses to Harriman 49-39. And I did have a parent report that was an offensive. You can tell by the score, 49-39. People were up and down the field all night long.
Yeah, Hiram. Yes, they're pretty good ways away from.
Losing our mic again. Sorry about that. We're back on. Going down to Adairsville, big over Lafayette. Bremen, I believe that's how you say Berman, big over Ringo as the Tigers continue to struggle. Northwest Whitfield 21, Sonoraville 20, and Southwest Whitfield falls to Heritage 49-13. Phil, it's really, we're getting late in the year. We're in week 7, bye week coming up after this week. We have 3 region games left at Sequatchie County. And really, though, we're only about a week ahead of you in Alabama. It's kind of just, it's that time of year. And you get, I know in Tennessee, it's 1, 2, and 5 to play your out of region games. I believe it's in Alabama, it's 1, 2, and 5. So that's kind of over now, and everybody's getting into region.
Oh, yeah, back into region play. We're halfway through the season. Basically, this is actually, we'll call it week 6, but it's actually week 7 because we have a week 0.
Right.
But, for the most part, a lot of teams have had byes. And for the most part, this is game 6. We had the non-region games last week. A lot of them, I think we only had 1 region game in our area last week, and that was North Jackson and St. John Paul. But everybody else played outside of region or were off. And so now everybody steps right back into region play. We've got 3 region weeks, and now everybody starts jockeying for position and battling for home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. So this week, Friday, is a huge week in the state of Alabama.
Well, before we go on to this week, let's head back to last week. Or let's talk about this week a little bit. The way Alabama, do you like the way Alabama does it, where it's structured 1, 2, and 5?
Yeah, I think it's 1, 2, 5, and 10 actually.
1, 2, 5, and 10. Okay.
For most of the time, yeah, you work first 2. I mean, some of it's changed around some, but the one thing it does, the reason they do that is you don't make out your region schedule. The state does. Okay. It's already pre-made. So, say you're in an 18 region, or you automatically have 7 games fixed, and they're slotted where they're supposed to be. Then you fill in the other ones. So some teams, like I think one of the regions down here has 7 teams in it, so they've got 6 region games, and then you got 4 non-region games. So you got to put 1, 2, 5, and 10 to get your 4 non-region games in.
Okay.
And that makes it a little bit of easier scheduling for the coaches, because down here we don't have athletic directors. And if you did, that would make that simpler. And that way the coaches know where the slots are, and they tell the other coach they're trying to work out a deal. Well, I'm open this slot, this slot, this slot, this slot. And it's the same for them. So that way, say Valley-Head plays section, and next year when they redo schedules, there may be something where section wants to play somebody else week 2. Well, Valley-Head and section may decide to play week 5, and then Valley-Head moves the Ider game to week 2. So, if that's okay with Ider, but, you don't know how that's going to pan out. But it gives the schools a lot more options, because when they're making deals with each other, they know exactly what open dates they have.
Well, and also gives you an opportunity to have that good opening, that good opening week matchup. But I also wondered how Fife and Sylvania plays in week 10, but that would make sense now. They're both in 16 regions, yeah.
Yeah, region play. Because here lately, Fife has been playing Geraldine, so they're going to keep that there because they're in different classifications. So definitely that's going to be a given. And I think maybe in the past, Sylvania and Fife may have played week 5. I'm not sure. But then they chose to move it to the last week of the year, which is probably better for both teams, because both of them's got such important games up until that point. And sometimes you maybe want a little bit of a breather in week 5 than to play some traditional power. Of course, that didn't matter to Sylvania because they just put Pisgah in that spot.
Yeah.
So, I think all 10 of their games are gut wrenchers. It don't matter who they've scheduled.
Yeah.
Their schedule's tough from top to bottom.
And Coach Van's reply to me when I asked him about that week 10 was, in week 10, if he plays 5, he's not going to see a better coached football team, So when he's playoff ready once he gets to week 10.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you just lay your cards out and play the game, hoping nobody gets hurt. You want to win that one. You're going to probably be a little bit vanilla. Both teams will maybe a little bit vanilla, especially early part of the ball game. And, and if it gets close at the end, they'll pull out all stops. But you don't want to go out there and get your kids hurt, because it's a game that, it's important and you want to win it because it's the next game, but it don't have any playoff implications.
Well, Phil, shoot us that Alabama schedule this week, and I know one of them early on is going to be Sylvania Pisgah. Now tomorrow night, if you want to hear Coach Van's comments on Sylvania and Pisgah, just join me and Howie Chaney along with Coach Van on the Coach Van Show, 6:30 Alabama time, Tuesday nights here on River City Media. So go ahead, Phil, hit us up on the Alabama scores.
Well, let's go through some of the last week's scores. So there was some important rivalry games. Well, Gunners will beat Buckhorn 38-7. Fort Payne and Arab. It's a pretty good matchup between these two. But Fort Payne plays some good football right now. They knocked off Arab 38-14. It was Woodville winning again.
Hey, Phil, can I ask you a question about that Fort Payne? There was a newspaper article even up here in Chattanooga about how prolific Fort Payne's offense is. Is there a quarterback, running back, or something there that?
Vernador's their quarterback. He had thrown for 1,200 yards going into last week. Now, I don't know what his stats were for the Arab game. I read the headlines of the paper, but I didn't read a whole lot of it. I didn't have time. But he's probably up 1,500 yards so far this year, Zach Vernador, and he has been very good. I think he come to life in that first game against Scottsboro, and he's been a handful.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead with your scores, sir.
Yeah. Woodville went over Brindley Mountain 50-6. Fife, of course, winner over their fierce rival in Plainview 49-14. It was Collinsville over Gaston 47-0. Of course, Pisgah and Sylvania, what a game that was, 40-34 in favor of Pisgah. Randy, I guess you want to comment on this one just a little bit. What a great football game it was. Two great teams. The team that had the ball last and had enough time to score won this one, but this one could have went either way. It was back and forth, lead change after lead change all night long. It's one of them that everybody went to it, got their money's worth.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm partial to Coach Van. I talk to him every week. But, of course, we had Luke on here, Coach Pruitt. Two quality coaches, Phil. I think those two coaches of anybody in that area, they are the future of the coaching in that North Alabama area. You know, we talked about it. That's the next generation. You know, Coach Benefield or one of the Coach Pruitt maybe. You know, that's the next generation of the great names in North Alabama football.
Yeah, of course, you know, out there, both these coaches are going to tell you it's the players that makes them look good.
Absolutely.
And these two teams have a lot of upperclassmen. They've got young kids that are stepping up and contributing. So they're kind of mirror each other in a lot of ways, a lot of veterans, a lot of youth, a lot of skilled people. And that's what made this game so good. It was just the execution. Really, I think in this kind of game, really coaching doesn't decide a game like this. Players do. You just try to put them in position to make plays.
Absolutely.
And the kids win or lose the game for you.
And Pisgah fighting back 12 down. You can't say enough. And Coach Van and his group, I have so much respect for Coach Van, Phil. I know we do our show every week and we laugh and joke and kind of pick at each other, but Coach Van's a young coach and such maturity for that level of young coach too. I feel the same way about Coach Pruitt, you know. And I know Coach Van does our show each week mainly to give kids exposure and for his kids to get exposure. And that shows you what kind of coach and person he is.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, is the kids anyway. You know, the coach is just, you know, the head of the snake. But, you know, it's about the people around you that makes things go. And mainly it's the kids. You know, they do what they're told. Execute and you know, and have a good camaraderie, and you know, and are fierce competitors. And you know, biggest thing is keep that intensity level and play with passion. And I think that's what you could call a game like what happened with Pisgah and Sylvania. It was a game of passion. and one team just outdistanced the other one.
And I think both of them are going to make deep playoff runs.
Oh, they should. Both should. And moving on, Valley Head beat Outer 61-14. Of course, we talked about this being a good rivalry, but Valley Head jumped out on Outer early and won this one pretty handily. Gadsden City, in their classification, Class 6A, have been very good, but the last couple of weeks they've stepped out of region play. And this time they go down to Hillcrest of Tuscaloosa 32-3. Of course, they'll jump back in region play next week, have a chance to sew up a home playoff spot and win that region if they win out. Of course, they just got to mainly win 2 of the region games left. Sardis was a winner over Brewer 21-14. West End beat Section. Or actually, that was Westbrook Christian beat Section 56-12. West End was a winner over Sandrock 27-13. Cherokee County beat Mumford 55-10. Class 4A. Cherokee County is very, very good. Cedar Bluff picked up a surprise win. Early in the ball game, they struggled with Spring Garden. Was able to keep them out of the end zone in the first half, and then come back late and beat Spring Garden 7-6. That was a great defensive football game.
That's a little.
Victor Christian do what?
That's shocking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because Cedar Bluff was 2-1 or 3-1 going into the game, but the teams they had beaten were teams they should have beaten. But this was one that was a measuring stick game for them. And that was a huge win over their rival Spring Garden, because Spring Garden lately has dominated this series. So that's a big win for Cedar Bluff. Of course, also Victory Christian beat Galesville 44-12. Scottsboro won again as they piled up like 470 yards of offense and beat Priceville 56-14. St. John Paul beat winless North Jackson 40-26. Anniston was a winner over Piedmont. Piedmont now 1-4, I think, as they lost 14-9 to Anniston. Well, Piedmont's lost close games.
Yeah.
And of course, in a big game down here, it wasn't a region game, but boy, it was a great rivalry game. Boaz and Southside went at it. Boaz led in the fourth quarter by 2 scores, and then Southside came back and tied it, then won it in overtime, 48-45.
Well, Phil, it's like us going to Fayetteville last week at Squatch County. Fayetteville was 1-5. Also, the big sign says the 2020 state champion, so they haven't lost it that bad. Then you look at their record; they're 1-5, and the teams they've lost to is combined 28-2. Maybe that's sometimes what the fan don't see is you're supposed to beat this 1-5 team. You don't know what that 5 consists of sometimes.
Well, definitely so, because sometimes their schedule is just brutal. If the team hasn't laid down and put their head down yet and still playing with some confidence, and a lot of times that's the coaching staff. If they, keep those kids' head up and keep them to, you just keep playing, and good things will happen. And that's probably the case with Fayetteville. They're a lot better than what their record indicates.
100%, Phil. If they get in the playoffs, they're a team that could be 5-5 and win 2 or 3 rounds of playoff games.
Yeah, definitely so, because the level of competition they play is so good.
Yes. Because you get back into region play.
Well, huge region games. I know. I say North Sand Mountain. They're hosting a Sandrock. So it's homecoming for them. But, this is a game they need to win. It'll put them right in the playoff spot. Of course, they've got a matchup coming up, but probably with Collinsville. They still also got to play Pisgah. But North Sand Mountain, this will go a long way in them getting in the playoffs if they can knock past Sandrock. Of course, this is going to be a great one. Guntersville and Scottsboro play a region game, and this is probably going to be for the region championship in Class 5A. As Guntersville and Scottsboro, both undefeated, both 6-0, they're playing at Chorley Stadium up in Guntersville. Scottsboro beat Guntersville last year to kind of flip the table and really make their season. And then they won out and then got to the second round of the playoffs, and it stemmed from surprising Guntersville. So Guntersville going to want to have a little payback this time. But this Scottsboro team, a veteran team, is playing very well. So this is going to be a great matchup.
Well, Scottsboro is, I feel, when Scottsboro's good, they're really good, it seems like. And when they're not, they're not. You know what I'm saying? It's a program that highs can be super highs, but lows can be really low too.
Yeah, and Gunnersville, on the other hand, is consistently competitive all the time. If they have a 8-2 season, that's kind of mediocre for them. So, yes, but Scottsboro's got the kind of team this year. Of course, their coach has been there. This will be his third year, and he's one of them I think is going to keep that program going for a while, as long as he stays there coaching. Coach Chris Bell, he's an outstanding person. They run that veer offense option, and it's difficult to stop. And quarterback play is so important in that offense, and Scottsboro has that. So they are very good this year. This is one of those times where you say they're very good. They are very good.
In Tennessee, Week 8 is maybe the biggest genre of the year. Week 9 and 10, you're going to finish up in your region, and it just seems like this week there is really no marquee value. There's always good games, but nothing super marqueed in the area other than maybe Boyd Buchanan and Lakeway Christian. But there's a lot of like Sequoia Red Banks and Silverdale Signal Mountains, and Hickson plays Chattanooga Prep. Nothing that really catches your attention. So the eyes of the world, or our world, this tri-county area, tri-state area, really going to be on North Alabama this week then.
Yeah, definitely so. And Valley Head plays over at Cedar Bluff, and the way things have fallen in these two may be playing for an opportunity to play at home in the first round of playoffs, because there's two quality teams, big rivals. A lot of times it doesn't matter the records of this game. You can throw out the records because it's such a fierce rivalry and a huge game for both teams. Of course, Sylvania going to try to get back on the winning column. They moved their game to Thursday. They'll play at Grundy Co.
Yes.
This week. Of course, Albertville plays on Thursday too. They play over in Huntsville. But Sylvania needs to get back off the snide, get back focused on region play, and then that physical loss will kind of go away. Because you don't want to lose, but that game is not the type of game. And what you don't want to happen there is for Pisgah to beat you twice.
Right.
If you feel sorry for yourself and kick yourself in the butt for not winning that game, and you don't focus on Glencoe, you could lose a game that could probably derail your whole season.
Absolutely.
So I think Sylvania, being as mature as they are, they'll put that loss behind them and take care of business this week.
And I know, we don't mention it down here, and I don't know if it's a factor in this, but I know last year they had to move some games because of reffing. And we have it in Tennessee too. It seems a little better now, but there's still, if anybody, I wouldn't do it, Phil. Toughest job out on the field may be reffing high school football.
Oh, definitely, you're right. I don't know that that's the reason they moved this one to a Thursday, but they had to have a reason, though, because a lot of times state don't want you to move region games
right
during the middle of the year, but there must be something going on. I know the following week, Pisgah's honoring all their former head coaches, so they had to move the game to Thursday to get that done, and they're playing North Side Mountain. So that was probably when the state okayed that, because any former coaches, a lot of them are still in coaching or helping or principals or whatever it may be. So they want to honor those people. And on a normal Friday night, they can't come.
Well, Phil, and we'll wrap up tonight. We don't have a guest. We won't go into our interview segment. And folks, stay with us. We'll get guests back. But just like I talked to a coach at a prominent high school today that texted me back and said, Randall, I'd love to come on, but it's install day. You've got to give me a break. And I was like, yeah, you got it. So he did promise to come on before playoff season. I'll let you know when he comes on. I'll let you know who it was, but not to throw him under the bus. I understood. But as we head towards the playoffs, I really think there's a couple of teams here in the Chattanooga area that set up for some major runs. One of them being South Pittsburgh, who I've said the 1A runs through South Pittsburgh. The other being McCallie, which I think the large school, large private school, runs through McCallie. I think Hickson is making enough noise that if they keep rolling, they're going to win six. If they get to this weekend, it's 6 in a row. There's some of my favorites up in this area to make a playoff run. Do you have anybody that's kind of that? Pisgah, Plainview 5, probably all, but anybody else down there that's set up to make a nice run?
Oh, definitely so. I mean, this week 5 plays at Collinsville. Collinsville's only lost one game. That was to Pisgah. 5 is one of those teams you look at in Class 2A. Sylvania is one you look at in Class 3A because of what they did last year. So naturally, they're going to be in the hunt this year. Of course, there's going to be some tough competition. I know Locust Fork is very good this year, as is Mars Hill. So it's going to be tough, but, Sylvania just has to take care of business now because you want that home playoff game in the first round. Another one's Cherokee County. They play again this week, but they had that big win last week over Munford, 55-10, and they're just mauling people. Of course, they got to the finals last year and got beat, but they're another one that's going to make a deep playoff run. And one you kind of maybe watch out for, Gadsden City. They're in Class 6A now. They have been playing teams outside the region. They're very tough, but they're going to be seasoned come playoff time. They're a team that could be reckoned with. They got Hazel Green this week. Of course, Fort Payne, they've kind of surprised some folks with their offense. We'll find out how they do in Class 6A. They're lined up to finish second in the region behind Gadsden City. But normally Fort Payne goes down in the first or second round of the playoffs. This could be one of those teams that could get to the second or third round.
Nice. We
will find out later on. We don't know, but they're a team that's maybe kind of a little bit dangerous. Of course, we've talked about Pisgah. They play Whitesburg Christian this week. They're a different favorite. They're ranked number 3 in Class 3A. Of course, we had a team, Coosa, in 1A, but from what we understand, they've had to forfeit games.
Yeah.
So that's going to knock them down. And they were one of those teams you point to that you could see in the finals. But I don't know what's going to happen there. They're appealing. So I really don't know the whole story behind that. But right now, they've had to forfeit 4 games. So that's kind of changed things up just a little bit.
Well, and what I forgot to throw in there, Phil, was Bradley Central, of course, in 5A, they're going to make a run too. But there's also, you've got those teams. Sometimes, I also left out Marion County, who's quietly undefeated. It kind of sounds like those teams, we go, well, Marion County's undefeated. Whitwell's lost 2. Sometimes you get a team that makes a run that you might not expect it, maybe that's the Hickson or the Whitwell, a team that's 7-3, 8-2, and wins 2 or 3 rounds, and all of a sudden you realize they got better as the year went on.
Yeah, you have that down here too. I mean, you got one like Geraldine did last year.
Yes.
They quietly upset Mars Hill, got to the quarterfinals, and they lost to Sylvania. Well, they're in that same boat again. They're riding along and got a great opportunity to finish second in the region and quietly slip in there and make a run in the playoffs, because after they lost to Sylvania, things kind of sort of died down for them because they're a little beat-up football team. But if they get it back and get to playing well at the end of the year, they'll make a run in the playoffs, and it'll be one of those teams you really don't point to.
Yeah, and if it comes out like we expect, they'll probably get you the 2 seed in that region.
Yeah, if they win out, I mean, who knows there? Because that region's so competitive. Sylvania may be a little bit head and shoulders above everybody else, but Ohatchee's pretty good on a given night. Plainview can beat you.
Yeah.
Hoax Bluff is playing very well. Piedmont, even though they're 1-5, they're liable to ruin somebody's season.
Absolutely.
But you can't count. And I know Sylvania's probably a heavy favorite over Glencoe, but Glencoe is a well-coached football team. They're one of those that's going to be up and coming. And on a given night, they can give you problems. And so you can't take them for granted. So there's no easy wins in that region. So on the other hand, though, it prepares you for the playoffs when you play against tough region opponents. Because no matter if you're way better than them for a half or so, they're going to give you a good look.
And Coach Smith now, he may not be there now, but he's going to be there soon.
Oh, yeah, Westbrook,
yes.
Yeah, definitely so. They have been kind of up and down. They come back and nearly beat Ohatchee. And then the next week they got beat pretty badly by somebody. So they're kind of an up and down team. But when they find that consistent level, he'll have them rolling. But it ain't going to take him very long.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, Phil, I know we didn't have a guest, but it was still a great week. Sounds like next week is the move week in Alabama, kind of like moving week in Tennessee was this week. Had a lot of matchups this week that kind of everybody's kind of positioned now. It's win the next 2 weeks, and you know where you're going to be. Yeah,
down here, this game's going to position everybody to know where they're going to be at. Kind of sort of things kind of start unfolding on who may get in, who won't get in, and then who may be hosting a playoff game.
Right.
There will be a lot of those questions will be answered this week.
Well, and like Coach Van said, the first goal is to win the region. And while it's great playing those Pisgah and Fife games, it's really the region games that set you up for the playoffs.
Yeah, because you can't have a slip up in those because they can cost you dearly. Because if you lose to somebody you're not supposed to, you end up in that tiebreaker situations, and there's no guarantees in that.
Yeah. Well, Phil, that'll wrap it up for me this week. You got anything else, my friend?
Oh, I don't know of anything else.
I know one thing. That was the best waffle I've ever had at 2:30 in the morning at IHOP. Well, the one at Waffle House last year at 4:00 was maybe better, but that was pretty good last Saturday night after the Tennessee-South Carolina game. And,
it's a long trip home. I got to sleep a little bit on the way up there, a little bit on the way back, but the game was fun. It took every bit of the energy.
Yeah, it certainly did. Well, for Randall Cunningham, for Phil Harris, this is Beyond the Boot, your weekly high school football magazine for the tri-state area. And we will see you next week with a big week from Alabama.